Hey there Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. So in a previous video we talked about your Saturn return. If you haven't seen that already, I will link that somewhere down below. But in today's video we will be discussing your solar return. I'm going to show you how to find your solar return chart, and I'll also explain what a solar return is. Plus, we will look at what the planets represent within your solar return chart, and we will also look at what your rising sign represents within your solar return chart. On that note, I do hope that you find this video to be helpful. Let's do this. Now, the solar return is much more frequent in comparison to the Saturn return. Your Saturn return occurs every 28 to 31 years or so, but your solar return occurs every year. The solar return happens when your natal sun returns to its natal position within your birth chart. Basically, your solar return lines up with your birthday. And when you experience your birthday each year, you're also greeted with new themes and new things to look forward to throughout the year ahead. I guess you could say that solar returns can be used as a great predictive tool. However, with that being said, it's also good to combine this with your transits and with your progressions. I will be making more videos about transits and progressions, so once they are up, I will also link them down below. But still, when it comes to predictive tools within astrology, things like solar returns are really good, and similarly so are transits and progressions. Okay, so let's go over a quick tutorial on how to find your solar return chart. I'm going to be using astro.com for the purpose of this tutorial. Full credit goes to astro.com for their chart generators. So go on to astro.com and type in all of your birth information. So your time of birth, your place of birth, your date of birth, all of that. Then select your name and then go to extended chart selection. Once there, select your chosen house system. Now, I am going to be using whole signs for the purpose of this video. You can choose whichever house system suits you, of course. Then once you've done that, go to chart type and select solar return chart. Now, in this section here where it says start date, notice the date, okay? It says here the actual date. So the date that I'm recording this is the 21st of March 2022. So if you were born in July, for example, you will get your year ahead from July 2022 onwards. But to save the confusion here, in this section, simply type in your birthday. So if you're born on the 11th of July, type in the 11th of July 2022. This will show you your year ahead from July 11th 2022 until July 11th 2023. Or if you want to see the current solar return year you're experiencing, then simply type in 2021. So I'm going to type in July 11th, 2021 because we're in March. I still have about 4 months left of this particular solar return year from 2021 until 2022. All right, so with all of that explained, I'm going to use my own chart as an example. So I was born on the 8th of February 1992, and I want to see my solar return from 2022 until 2023. So I will type in this section the 8th of February 2022. And once you have successfully selected your chosen solar return year, go to click here to show the chart. Right, so looking at my chart, notice how I have a Scorpio rising and a Taurus moon. Naturally, my sun is still in Aquarius because that never changes. I'll actually show you my birth chart so you can see that my natal sun is in Aquarius and it is at 19 degrees. And so showing the same degrees, this is showing the same degrees as my solar return sun in Aquarius. I hope you can see that from both of the charts being displayed. However, in my birth chart, I have a Virgo rising and an Aries moon. Therefore, this solar return year is showing a very different rising sign and moon sign. My natal rising is still in Virgo and my natal moon is still in Aries. These showcase my personality, my identity, my unconscious, my emotional habits, my physical appearance, and so on. But during this particular solar return year, the way I see the world will change. The way I manage my emotions will change. I will go through different themes, different experiences. I will experience a different chapter. Though on that note, here is something interesting to try. Try to retrieve every solar return you have experienced throughout your life so far. I actually saved mine from ages 0 to 30 years old because I am 30. I also saved my solar returns for the ages 31 to 33 just to be nosy, just to be curious. But yeah, try saving each of your solar returns and then try to find patterns and themes within them. For example, given that I am experiencing a Scorpio rising year this year, I wanted to see what other years I have experienced a Scorpio rising. In total, I have experienced 3 Scorpio rising years, and I've also experienced 4 Leo rising years as another example. And then I've experienced one other year where I had a Taurus moon. That was back in 2003. So from 2003 until 2004, I was 11 years old. And that Taurus moon was in my 12th house. Then, even looking at the other Scorpio rising years, the year after I was born, I experienced a Scorpio rising year. I was 1, and so looking at the chart rulers, Pluto and Mars, Pluto was in Scorpio in the 1st house and Mars was retrograde in Cancer in the 9th house. Moreover, when I was 5 years old, Pluto was in Sagittarius in 2nd house and Mars was retrograde in Libra in the 12th house. And Chiron was also conjunct that Scorpio rising, making the exact same degree actually. Now, whilst I can't remember anything from these ages, I was about 5 years old when I experienced something very traumatic. I'm not going to get into the details of this, but this event was something that was hidden from me for many, many years until I was about 24 years old. Then I was 9 years old when I experienced another Scorpio rising year, and coming into this specific solar return year, both Pluto and Mars will be in Capricorn in the 3rd house. Venus and Mercury will also be there. So I'm interested to see how these energies play out for me this year. Honestly, I'm still trying to process a lot of heavy emotional stuff during this stage in my life. But essentially, when it comes to your solar returns, try to find themes and patterns. Try to see what other years you've experienced a planet in a certain sign or house. And the cool thing about solar returns is that you can keep them as a type of biography. You can read each year you've been alive, really. Though it might be best to ask your parents or close loved ones and relatives, etc. about your younger years. Or perhaps you can even seek out assistance from a professional, so looking at a therapist, for example. And then you can look at your solar return charts to see how things match up and so on. So with that being said, remember where the sun is within your birth chart. Like I said, in every solar return chart, the sun is going to remain within the same sign, but keep in mind the house your sun is in within your birth chart. The placement of your natal sun sign is important. It's going to show you where you truly shine, where you feel alive, where you experience joy and happiness. Your natal sun has a lot to do with your purpose. It is associated with the person you are striving to become. It represents the way you express yourself authentically. But then when it comes to your solar return chart, the sun might be in a different house. So if the sun is in the 8th house within your solar return chart, for example, but your natal sun is in the 6th house, you're still going to feel your best whenever you have a routine or whenever you enjoy your work. But during that specific solar return year where the sun is in the 8th house, your ego will be going through transformations. You might decide to go for therapy because you know there's something you would like to change about yourself. And again, maybe the sun is in the 11th house within your solar return chart. And then, of course, with the natal sun being in the 6th house, you're still going to find purpose via attending to your health. But during that specific solar return year with the sun in the 11th house, you seek connection with friends. Maybe you branch out and you join a club for enjoyment purposes, or maybe your views about society changes. Basically, your natal sun sign matters. It still matters. And so does your birth chart. I mean, if you have your natal Venus in Cancer, you're still going to be attracted to a comforting and supportive partner. But if Venus is in Aries in your solar return chart, you might be somewhat more reckless and fast-paced when it comes to relationships that year. During that year, you might take more risks. Or another example, if you have your natal Mars in Taurus, well, you're still going to enjoy sensuality and pleasure when it comes to sex. But if Mars is in Sagittarius in your solar return chart, you might be somewhat more adventurous and free-spirited when it comes to sex. During that year, you might be seeking the thrill. Okay, so with all of that being explained, I hope things were easy to understand. Let's get into what planets and houses represent within the solar return chart. Firstly, the solar return sun. This signifies what you're striving toward that year. It shows what your primary focus is. Essentially, it shows the area of life that will make your heart sing. Keeping in mind that the solar return sun sign never changes, but the house placement can. And this is something I just want to touch on quickly, and that is really the importance of the sun within astrology. I think the importance of the sun can get lost because of how more and more people are seeing beyond just the sun sign, which of course is also a good thing. Yes, astrology is so much more than us looking at our sun sign, but this shouldn't take away from the importance of it either. Moreover, as I said a moment ago, the solar return sun can represent where you shine that year, where you feel the most alive, what you enjoy, what makes you feel happy. The solar return sun can signify what we are most consciously aware of throughout that year. And others might recognize this too, seeing as the sun can be expressed outwardly and visibly. On that note though, also consider aspects being made to the sun. So for example, if your solar return sun is in the 5th house, your primary focus for the year might be on your creative projects or on dating and on your romantic relationships, or perhaps your hobbies or your sports. They make your heart sing throughout that or this particular year. Maybe you feel the most alive when you're partying or when you're celebrating, or maybe it's a year where you truly let your hair down. Perhaps you feel more confident, more attractive, or maybe others notice you. They give you more attention. It could be that you feel seen. It's a year where you truly are visible. You're in the spotlight. You feel like your authentic self. And when I was 25, my solar return sun was in the 5th house, and that was the year when I guess you could say I played a lot more. Then looking at the solar return moon, well, this signifies what your emotional needs are for that year, as well as how you might process your emotions. It represents how you wish to be supported emotionally, how you wish to be cared for, as well as how you care for others. Moreover, the solar return moon can show your sensitivities and your soft spots throughout that year, and it can also show how you are being moved internally. What things move you the most? What things are impacting your emotions and your feelings? Likewise, it can signify your private world. Though with that being said, do also consider the sign the moon is in along with aspects. For example, if your solar return moon is in the 12th house, you need time in solitude to process your emotions. You might be overwhelmed by your emotions throughout this particular year. Perhaps you lock yourself away and you cry yourself to sleep at night. It might be a pretty challenging year for you emotionally. Perhaps you are particularly sensitive, or maybe you practice meditation or you pray. Maybe it's a year where you tap into the spiritual side of life. It might be hard to put your emotions into words, or you might feel like you are a victim. Perhaps you feel really lonely, or maybe you need your alone time. And when I was 26 and 27, my solar return moon was in the 12th house. One year, the moon was in Scorpio, and then the next year, the moon was in Pisces. Those 2 years, let me just tell you, they were heavy. I cried a lot, but this was all very cleansing, and I had so much that I had to process. Moving on to the solar return Mercury. So this signifies what you are curious about that year, what you want to learn about, what you're interested in, what kinds of discussions you'll be having, how you communicate. Do you feel more social that year or do you not? Are there any communicative skills you develop? Moreover, the solar return Mercury can show how you make decisions and arrive to conclusions. Naturally, however, consider the sign Mercury is in along with aspects. Though, for example, if your solar return Mercury is in the 9th house, you might seek to further your education or your knowledge. Or perhaps you start thinking about taking on a new course, or maybe publishing a new course. Or perhaps you're interested in philosophy or religion, or you're interested in global matters and politics, or you're interested in law. Then again, it could be a year where you are curious about other cultures and ways of life. Maybe you want to learn more about other people. You have tons of questions. You basically want to discover more about yourself and the world. Now, when I was 25, my solar return Mercury was in the 9th house in Pisces. And that year I changed things up on my Instagram. I started being much more creative and I started playing around with colors and visuals. Then looking at the solar return Venus, well, this signifies the way you behave within your relationships throughout that year. How you show love towards others and towards yourself. It can also represent your attitudes towards love, relationships, and money. Likewise, the solar return Venus can show what brings you pleasure that year, what you're attracted to, what you like, what you desire, and it can also show potential talents and skills that you develop. Though on that note, also consider the sign that Venus is in along with aspects. Though, for example, if your solar return Venus is in the 3rd house, throughout this year, you might develop skills when it comes to writing or researching. Or perhaps you educate yourself on a particular subject. You might learn an entirely new skill, or you might think of new ways of making money. You come up with all of these fresh and bright ideas. You might like sharing and telling stories that year, or you might be more social. Perhaps you are a lot more engaging when it comes to general discussions. Then again, you might reach out to your siblings this year. Or you might spend more time within your local town or city. Now, when I was 18 and 26, my solar return Venus was in the 3rd house. Both years Venus was in Aquarius, and throughout those years I wasn't in a relationship, but I did enjoy discussing ideas and theories and concepts with others. Then moving on to the solar return Mars. So this signifies what your goals are for that year, what you seek to pursue. It is associated with your drive and your self-assertion and how you take action. It can also show how you handle conflict and disagreements, how you argue and handle arguments. Moreover, the solar return Mars can show your passions and your motivations for that year, as well as your physical energy. Not to mention, the solar return Mars can represent your sex drive. Naturally, however, it's good to consider the sign that Mars is in along with aspects. For example, if your solar return Mars is in the 1st house, you might experience a year where you are self-motivated, you're a self-starter. Perhaps it's a year where you feel more energized, you feel a desire to act and initiate things, you feel passionate about your life path and your direction. Perhaps you set goals in association with your physical appearance or in association with self-discovery. You might have a stronger sex drive, or you might want to actively move your body. Now, when I was 26 and 27, my solar return Mars was in the 1st house. One year, Mars was in Sagittarius, and then the next year, Mars was in Aries. And throughout those 2 years, it really was go, go, go for me. I would go to bed super late and I would get up super early. Right, so looking at the solar return Jupiter, and this signifies how you improve and grow throughout the year, how you expand your awareness via teaching, learning, travel, and self-development, and so on. Likewise, the solar return Jupiter can show what things you do to step outside of your comfort zone, how you open your mind, how you explore new opportunities, as well as the type of opportunities that are presented to you. Moreover, the solar return Jupiter can signify where you find meaning that year, as well as what you seek more of. Plus, it can show where you experience luck and fortune and where you feel optimistic and hopeful and really happy. Though with that being said, also consider the sign that Jupiter is in along with aspects. For example, if your solar return Jupiter is in the 7th house, you might wish to improve upon things within your relationships this year, or you might seek to gain more from within your relationships. Maybe you are especially open-minded and you're willing to explore different possibilities with your partner or with your friends. Then again, you might see growth when it comes to your clients and your customers. Though on the other hand, seeing as the 7th house can rule our blind spot, perhaps you don't acknowledge the opportunities that are being presented to you within your relationships. Or perhaps you don't feel all that optimistic and hopeful. You find it difficult to see the bigger picture. Perhaps it's that these qualities are reflected to you via others, or it could be that it's that you look to others for hope and for optimism. You look to others for answers. Likewise, perhaps even your enemies, they can teach you something this year. Now, when I was 28, my solar return Jupiter was in the 7th house in Capricorn, and that year I learned more about myself by learning about other people. Right, so looking at the solar return Saturn. So this signifies the type of obstacles and limitations you experience throughout the year, what delays you're faced with, what hardships you might go through. Furthermore, the solar return Saturn can represent the types of things you are building upon throughout the year. You do this slowly and gradually. It can also show the ways in which we set boundaries, as well as how we organize and structure our lives. Plus, the solar return Saturn can show where we show up as a member of authority or as an adult, where we truly want to step up and be mature, be responsible. Now, do consider the sign Saturn is in along with aspects. So for example, if your solar return Saturn is in the 11th house, you might experience delays and obstacles when it comes to your hopes and wishes. Perhaps you must wait things out for a little bit longer. Or perhaps you experience hardships within your friendship circles, or it could be that you face challenges when it comes to your community, when it comes to any clubs you're a part of. Then again, it could be a year where you build upon these connections or you build upon networks. But this can feel like a bit of a struggle. Maybe this is a year where you have to set boundaries between yourself and your friends, or maybe you must be responsible. You are called to show up as an adult within your groups. Now, whenever I was 18, my solar return Saturn was in the 11th house, and that year I experienced a few hardships within my social circles. And given that I was 18, I was not very mature. Moving on to the solar return Uranus. So this signifies sudden changes you'll experience throughout the year. How things will change, and you won't see these changes coming. Likewise, the solar return Uranus can represent how you rebel and go against the status quo, how you do your own thing that year. It can also show where you make major breakthroughs as well as where you break away from things, where you break free. Plus, the solar return Uranus can show the types of alternatives you explore that year. However, on that note, do also consider the sign Uranus is in along with aspects. Uranus may be a generational planet, but when it comes to solar return charts, well, things are much more personal. So for example, if your solar return Uranus is in the 8th house, you might go through sudden changes when it comes to your deeper and hidden emotions. You might feel highly misunderstood, or you might prefer to deal with heavier emotions on your own. Moreover, you might break away from intimacy and emotional closeness, or you might break free from an emotionally challenging situation. And again, perhaps this year you are open to exploring alternatives when it comes to things like intimacy and vulnerability, or sex, or perhaps you rebel against others trying to possess or control you. And when I was 16, my solar return Uranus was in the 8th house in Pisces, and that year I was super private. I shut myself away from family. I avoided close connections without even realizing it at the time. I didn't really understand why at the time either. Then looking at the solar return Neptune. So this signifies your spiritual world, your spiritual connection, how you go inward throughout the year, how you show empathy and compassion. It also represents where you escape and how you escape. Do you spend more time alone than usual? Do you feel like you have to switch off and recharge more often? Do you take medication, or are you battling with an addiction? Moreover, the solar return Neptune can show the type of sacrifices you make that year, as well as the type of fears you have. Fears you might not even be aware of. It can also show your dreams and your fantasies. Likewise, it can represent where you dissolve, where you give up your own identity to merge with another. Not to mention, it can highlight giving up control and accepting what is. Naturally, also consider the sign that Neptune is in along with aspects. Neptune may be a generational planet, but when it comes to solar return charts, things are much more personal. So for example, if your solar return Neptune is in the 4th house, you might seek to escape your own home, or you might escape within your home that year, or you might spend a lot of time in your private space, or you might take certain substances at home. Moreover, you might make sacrifices for others and not realize you're doing it. Perhaps you feel sorry for certain people, or you fear that others will hurt you. Then again, maybe it's that you feel sorry for yourself that year. Or perhaps your family, they save you. A family member rescues you. Maybe you feel this unconditional love towards your family. Or you might be sort of confused about the relationship that you have with your family. Or you might fantasize and dream about a beautiful life, about a place where you feel safe. When I was 22, my solar return Neptune was in the 4th house in Pisces, and I moved abroad for a short while. I was basically dreaming of a better place. Okay, so moving on to the solar return Pluto. This signifies the type of transformations you experience throughout the year, and these transformations can change you for better or for worse. Moreover, the solar return Pluto can represent things like loss, trauma, control, power, sex, and intimacy. So, will you experience a loss that year, or will you go through something traumatic or scary? Will you come up against power struggles? How will sex and intimacy play out? Also, the solar return Pluto can show emotional issues you experience within your relationships due to your psychological blockages and inner workings. Plus, it can represent things like taxes, loans, and joint financial planning. Now, do also consider the sign that Pluto is in along with aspects. Pluto may be a generational planet, but when it comes to solar return charts, things are more personal. So for example, if your solar return Pluto is in the 10th house, during this year, you might go through major transformations when it comes to your profession, such as getting a promotion or even being made redundant. Or maybe you are confronted by how power hungry you can be, how obsessive and driven you can be when it comes to achieving. Then again, it could be that you experience something traumatic when it comes to members of authority, or maybe you are exposed by members of the public, or perhaps you feel a need to expose others. Perhaps you come up against power struggles within your profession, or maybe you realize there are emotional issues to work through within your relationships due to how focused you are on career-related matters. Or it could be that you borrow money for your business this year. Now, when I was 27, my solar return Pluto was in Capricorn in the 10th house, and I had to take a step back from fixating so much on my profession. I was awakened to a few truths. Okay, so moving on to the solar return Chiron. So this signifies the types of things you are healing, fixing, or mending throughout the year, as well as the type of insecurities you feel. Looking at where you fear rejection or where you fear abandonment. Also looking at where you feel judged and ridiculed by others. But at the same time, the solar return Chiron can show how you solve problems and figure things out. Though on that note, do also consider the sign that Chiron is in along with aspects. So for example, if your solar return Chiron is in the 6th house, you might experience insecurities associated with your weight, diet, or health. Throughout this year, you might fear being rejected due to not working hard enough. Maybe you possess fears of falling behind, or maybe you are extra critical and you don't want to be ridiculed for your work. Then again, perhaps constructive criticism can help you improve things. Maybe this is a year where you decide to fix so many things that you do on a daily basis. Now, I am currently experiencing a solar return Chiron in the 6th house here in Aries, and I feel a strong urge to clean up my fitness levels and my work schedules. I have struggled with body issues in the past, and I'm determined not to go back to that. And lastly then, let's look at the solar return rising sign. So the solar return rising sign can represent the way you see the world and how you approach new situations throughout the year. It can also signify the type of image you project, how you come across to others. Moreover, the solar return rising sign can tell you something about your physical appearance that year. Plus, it can signify your overall direction and path. Though on that note, do make sure you are looking to your chart ruler or chart rulers. So locate the ruling planet or planets of your rising sign. This planet or these planets, this can represent common themes you'll be experiencing throughout the year. So for example, if your solar return rising sign is in Cancer, well, throughout this year, you might approach situations with more caution. You might see the world through a lens of safety and security. You might also follow a path where you move towards family and home, emotional support and comfort. These things are important to you throughout the year. Now, when I was 28, my solar return rising sign was in Cancer, and I moved in with my partner that year. Then my chart ruler, being the moon, it was in Leo in the second house. That year, I used my willpower to save. Things ebbed and flowed, but my focus was on wanting to create stability. In the back of my mind, I was thinking family, children, home. Okay then, Cosmic Warriors, so that concludes my video talking about solar returns. So looking at how to read your year ahead. Now, I do hope that this video made sense. Again, make sure that you are taking your transits and your progressions into consideration. Though on that note, please do let me know if you could follow along today or if you got something out of this video today. I just hope that it was useful. And as always, let me know your thoughts and your opinions in the comment section down below. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And of course, if you have not subscribed already, then make sure that you click that subscribe button and also give this video a like if you did like it today. And I will be back with another video very, very soon. Bye.